A lot of people, still have that in their mind, that violence model of they have to get beat up for it to really matter, right? Whereas, like with Evan Stark, the coercive control is really the terror and the torment that happens between those portable or those really violent events. Because a lot of even violent domestic abuse perpetrators terrorize their prey in between, and that's all the coercive control. And now looking back, when I do my timeline, I can see that in the in-between of really horrific events, there was so much of that coercive control going on. I just at the time didn't realize how much of a pattern it was and how insidious it had become in all aspects of my life.
Welcome back, everybody, to Prey versus Predator. Our podcast is designed to help you learn the language for coercive control and to help support survivors and victims, current victims and survivors of coercive control. Jill, you want to introduce our guest?
Absolutely. Today we are honored to have Courtney from New Jersey Protective Moms with us. Courtney has a big story to tell because her passion around this issue really stems from her own life experience. And Courtney, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
So we just chatted for a few minutes before we pressed record, and I'm already just super interested in knowing how you came to be where you are now. Like, how long were you in this relationship? How did you meet your predator? So for our language, we would call yourself a prey and your ex we would call a predator. So tell us your story, and we're going to like pepper you with questions as you tell it, but the floor is yours.
Thank you for having me. And I love that language because it is so accurate. I know Dr. Cochiola is using similar language, which I love. I love that shift. I think it's so important because they are predators. They truly are like, what is the saying? They're wolf in sheep's clothing, right? And they walk around.
Absolutely.
They're literally coaches, teachers, lawyers, doctors. They are people that you come in contact with every day, and they're behind the scenes monsters to their loved ones. So it's really important. I appreciate all the work that you guys do. But that being said, I was young and naive. I was 19 when I met my predator. And we dated for about 3.5 years. It was, for the majority, honestly, pretty uneventful, but we were so young and we were starting out life. I was entrepreneur. I had dropped out of college and I owned a business, so I was super busy with that. We had purchased a home that we were renovating, so we were busy doing, home renovation things. Looking back, I don't think that the emotional bond was ever super strong or would have ever lasted if his behaviors hadn't turned abusive. But that's an aspect of his personality that I now realize, like, he's totally incapable of that true emotional bond with probably anybody. So that being said, we were together for a while. We, got the house renovated, we got married. And then I got pregnant with our oldest, who is now 14, our daughter. And it was quickly after that I had our daughter that I noticed things really change.
That often happens.
Yeah. And I hear that story so often, right? And it's really easy to make excuses when you have a child with somebody. And I think it's even easier to stay because it's harder to leave. So it's this double bind that victims, survivors, and prey find themselves in once they have a child or more than one child, right? So things were definitely strained. Odd things, he didn't want to hear her cry. If she cried, he would get angry. He didn't want certain people holding her. He wouldn't let anybody watch her. He would get strange about people coming over. He wanted me to exclusively breastfeed and not have any medication when I had her and make all her baby food, which I was already interested in doing, but it was just that control that started to seep in, right? Him telling me, everything that I had to do. So we were definitely starting to argue a lot. It was strained, but again, you're sleep deprived, you're stressed, you're a new mom, you're hormonal, you're all these things. And if I would try to bring things up that I wasn't happy with, certain behaviors, it would be you're postpartum. You're just like losing it. Which is so damaging to women because you really start to question yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a new experience. So when you are experiencing something new, like marriage, like childbirth, I find that women are so much more easily manipulated by them too, because you don't have a set of behaviors or experiences yourself to gauge against. You're
Right.
navigating new territory too. So it's easier for them to do what they do, which is manipulate and cause chaos in those scenarios. And a lot of women and a lot of prey, I think, also talk about like family gaslighting or institutional gaslighting, because I would bring things up to my mom or my mother-in-law, and there was a lot of just, well, that's just husbands, that's just men. Oh, who cares if he sleeps on the couch? Just let him be. Just deal. So there was a lot of that rhetoric that kind of just kept me in this relationship, even though something inside me was just nagging me constantly that it just wasn't sitting right.
Well, it's also, sorry to interrupt, but it's also
Yeah.
hard as a person who's a prey to understand that somebody could be gaslighting you for their own advantage, or because we've talked about that before, that sometimes we would try to gaslight each other in the moment. It's like, how do you do that? We don't know how to do it because it doesn't come naturally to us. So it is a confusing experience, especially if you're young.
Yeah. And as a mother and as a prey, as a woman, as a new mother too, I find it's also very easy to put your feelings aside to try to make it better. Like,
Yes.
oh, well, if he's just upset because he's not sleeping and he has to go to work, then I'm just going to make sure that he doesn't hear her cry, or I'm going to be extra nice, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to cook his favorite dinner. I'm going to make him happy. And you're constantly trying to make them happy, but they keep moving that goalpost, and you completely run yourself into the ground. You become literally that stump at the end of the giving tree. There's nothing left to give. And they're still just demonstrative in every aspect of their being. Which is really dangerous because you have children you have to, take care of, and you have a career if women stay in their career, and they have all these other aspects of life that they need to excel in, but they're expending so much of their energy and resources on this person who will never, ever, ever appreciate it or do the right thing. And that's a really hard lesson to learn. And I don't think it's a lesson people can learn until they are kind of at the end of their own rope. So that being said, of course, I did what most people do, and I had another child quickly thereafter. And, you also have this in mind, like, oh, when the kids are older, it'll be better, or, maybe this time it'll be better. And of course, it wasn't better. I can remember when my son was born, of course, he was elated because, it was a boy, which I do think there's some genderedness to my predator. I don't think every single one fits that mold, but mine, there's definitely this big favoritism of male versus female that he kind of plays to triangulate the family, like it's him and his son versus me and my daughter, which has caused problems throughout. But I can remember when I had him, my family and my mom and my sister wanted to come to the hospital with my daughter, who was 2, who had never really been apart from me. So she wanted to come see us. And I remember he wasn't ready for them to come. So he flipped out in the hospital. It was this huge thing. And from there, I can just say it quickly disintegrated. It got worse because he wanted to control every aspect of everything. It was almost like he had 2 kids now to control. So it got worse and worse. And I really felt stifled and suffocated and trapped because now I had a 2-year-old and a newborn.
So you're exhausted.
Exhausted. And I was running my own business. So I was exhausted. And he didn't want anyone to watch the kids. So I had the kids at my business all the time. It was a never ending cycle of, again, like I was expending all my resources to care for the kids, make him happy, and nothing ever made him happy. Nothing worked. The environment at home was just getting more and more tense. And, my daughter, even though she was only 2.5, and like approaching 3, she definitely was picking up on the environment in the home. Like you could cut the tension with a knife sometimes, in the house between us. So I can remember when my son was like 7 months old and my daughter was closer to 3, I wanted to go out to Arizona to visit one of my high school friends. She lived in Scottsdale. She was in PA school and she was nannying for a family. So she's like, I have strollers, I have car seats, like just come with the kids. It's nice weather here. Come visit. And again, like most of my friends weren't married or with kids yet. So when someone offers you to come with your 2 kids, you definitely take them up on that. Right. So I was like, I'm running. And he did not want me to fly with the kids without him. He was like, you're not going. If you go, I'm going to come to the airport. I'm going to call the police on you. I'm going to call Port Authority. I mean, just insanity. So I can remember I was bathing my son and my mother-in-law was at the house and she was just like, well, I never traveled with the kids, so I don't know why you have to go. And I was like, I just remember thinking to myself, I've got to get out of this because this is just not normal. I should be able to go see my high school girlfriend with my kids and let them run around and swim in October when it's 80 degrees in Scottsdale. So that kind of started my thought there, but I had to kind of lay in wait. My kids were really young. My family wasn't super supportive yet. And I needed to kind of get my act together financially too. I knew I wanted to sell my business before I started down the divorce road, if you will. I had some interim health problems. After that, I had just really wacky, like hormonal issues after I had my son. And it ended up being that I had a nodule on my thyroid and I needed to get a thyroidectomy because it was cancerous when they did the biopsy. So I did that. And I remember I had a really bad reaction to anesthesia. And my mom said when I got home, I was really sick, but they had put a patch on me to make me stop throwing up. And they were like, don't take this off of her. She has an incision in her throat. The throwing up is really painful. And my mom said she was leaving the bedroom. She had been talking to me and she stayed to watch in the doorway, but she saw him take the patch off. And that's when she kind of like turned and was much more supportive because I was violently ill that whole night.
Why did he do that? Like what was his thought?
I think he just wanted to make me miserable.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even know that he was doing that. My mom saw it and told me the next day.
So he didn't come up with like an excuse like, oh, I thought this was, I don't know, not part of the journey and you needed it off. Okay. Wow.
No. And I don't even know if I really ever approached it with him because at that point things were so far gone. And when she told me that, it was almost like the hair stood up on my arms because I was like, why would you do that to somebody? Why? That feeling of just being violated in such a icky way. And again, it's not this huge thing to most people, right? But obviously things had gone on leading up to that. And I was so sick and it was 2 days before Christmas. And if I didn't stop throwing up, they were going to have to admit me. And I'm like, why would he purposely want me to get sick again? Knowing that I had the reaction that I had to someone that you're supposed to be in love with, that you have children with. So shortly thereafter, I started talking to some lawyers and got some money together for a retainer, sold my business. And the real insanity kind of ensued. But that's when I really started also educating myself. And I forget how I came across Lundy Bancroft, but I read his book, Why Does He Do That? And that for me was really life-changing, and started me really down this path of just self-education and really trying to immerse myself in understanding the why, because although it's painful, I think sometimes to really have to understand and accept that the prognosis of them changing is very, very, very like slim to none. There's probably no chance they're going to change. And this is essentially a lifelong sentence that we have. I think when you understand how they work and accept that, you're much better equipped in being able to handle it, especially if you have kids.
Absolutely.
So that's when you would say you started developing a language around coercive control. Like, can you remember the first time you heard that phrase, like what it meant to you? I know it's a big question.
I know. So I think with Lundy, it was like a light bulb in my head because my ex had substance abuse issues. He frequently would get really high and he was almost easier to be around when he was stoned, but I hated it. So I was always in this like conundrum of like, do I complain about it or do I just let it go because it's more peaceful? But when I accepted that his abuse and his behaviors weren't a result of him like having substance abuse issues or he's an addict or he's struggling, it's a choice, is when I started to really do some more digging there. And I think it was, I know Evan Stark kind of started that whole term, and I'm a Rutgers alum too, because I did go back to school to finish. And I know Evan Stark hails from there. So I feel like it was somehow on Instagram, coming across that and reading the definition of it being like a civil, like a liberty crime and just the behaviors that they exhibit. And that helped me so much to kind of adopt that, because a lot of the things that I started reading, I was like, oh my gosh, he does that. He does that. He does that. He does that. So that really helped me to understand what coercive control really is and really kind of try to get as much education as I could around it. There was not nearly as much then. This was 2016 and 17 as there is now, which I'm so grateful for. But there's a lot of people that I've read, like I mentioned, Lundy, who are in that similar train of thought that this is a choice. They know what they're doing. They're doing it on purpose. So that definitely helped me catapult into the coercive control realm, which I'm eternally, again, like grateful for, because I think it helps a lot of people.
Yeah, I think Dr. Stark says it's not, it had always been treated as a criminal, intimate partner violence had always been looked at as a criminal issue in terms of getting hit. And then his work turned it into a human rights issue.
Yeah. And a lot of people, still have that in their mind, that violence model of they have to get beat up for it to really matter, right? Whereas like with Evan Stark, the coercive control is really the terror and the torment that happens between those reportable or those really violent events. Because a lot of even violent domestic abuse perpetrators terrorize their prey in between. And that's all the coercive control. And now looking back, when I do my timeline, I can see that in the in between of really horrific events, there was so much of that coercive control going on. I just at the time didn't realize how much of a pattern it was and how insidious it had become in all aspects of my life. Like my friends stopped coming over because he would just be rude to them. They would get weird feelings from him. He would say nasty crap to me in front of them. And they're like, I don't want to be around that. My family stopped coming around because, it would always be a problem. And then, other small things like when I was gearing up to sell my business, I went back to school and I was going to night school. And of course, it was always a problem because he would, have to work late, not be able to get home, but he didn't want certain people to watch the kids. So making it as difficult as possible as he could for me, really making me struggle. Right. And then there was one time when I had to go to Costco for something. I remember it was a Sunday. I had an exam or like a big paper due the next day. And I had both kids with me, schlepping them around because he didn't want to watch his own kids, by the way.
That's what I was going to ask you, if he ever watched his own kids.
He did and he didn't. Mostly he didn't. But, as soon as I filed for divorce, dad of the year wanted sole custody. So exactly. That is always like classic abuser move. So I remember looking at my laptop and thinking like, will he ever do anything to that laptop? I don't know why, but it just popped in my head. So I leave, I go to Costco, I do all these errands with my two kids. I get home, it's late. I'm putting laundry away. I'm doing whatever. I'm sitting down on my bed to finish my paper for school. And I remember opening my laptop and seeing the screen, and it was literally his fists through the screen.
Oh, wow.
He had smashed my laptop. And I'm like, so of course I'm panicking and I'm upset because I'm like, how can you do this? And this is before Google Drive and Google Sheets and all that. I can think of where my paper was on my computer, right? So I go to the police station because at this point I had it. And I'm telling the police officer I'm hysterical, like I'm going back to school, and he punched my computer. And he's like, well, I don't know what you want me to do.
Right.
And that right there was kind of my first taste of just the institutional gaslighting and the dismissiveness of everyone, of a lot of people in the system. They're not all that way. I don't want to say that they're all that way, but a majority of them are, which again is so disheartening, because when that's your first experience, it kind of deters you from reporting again, which happens to so many victims, so many prey, right? So, I remember leaving the house so upset and just looking at him sitting there on the couch, just like with a smug look on his face. He knew what he did. He said, "Oh, I knocked it over. I don't know what happened. It must have fallen." And I kind of knew right there that I was dealing with someone that was going to make it as difficult as possible, and someone that was so callous and cold and cruel and mean. I mean, how could you do that to somebody? And that is a really, really tough thing to have to sit with and accept.
Yeah. Do you have, I don't know if you've heard the term flying monkeys, but did he have his own little it sounds like his family was a bit on that end, a flying monkey, who's somebody that, I don't know, have you heard the term before?
Yes. So he definitely had a pretty large group of flying monkeys, I'll say. So when the separation and divorce kind of first started, he was really the one who kind of decided that he was going to split the friend group in two, right? He was going to make people pick sides, and he was going to be like, "You're either with me or you're against me." And that's, torched earth mentality. He's very much like that. So a lot of people kind of bought into the rhetoric of like, "Oh, he's just upset. He's just sad. The kids are so young and you want a divorce and you're like being really difficult about it." Which, I find it so interesting that setting boundaries and really like ending a bad cycle or just calling them out is somehow being difficult. But he really kind of lobbied for people to be in his camp, and he had a lot of flying monkeys. I lost a lot of friends, or people that I thought were friends, that really believed him. And his family for sure were enabling flying monkeys. And my predator is so overt. He's not really a covert. So I don't know if it's more so now flying monkeys or people are intimidated and scared of him. Like who they see how he has acted towards me, like who would in their right mind want to be on the other side of that. So I think as time has gone on and he's continuously showed his true colors, it's more the intimidation, but it started out, for sure the monkeys were swirling around him pretty heavily.
Wow.
And when you're a prey, this type of behavior, this kind of like evil genius that they enact, is so far outside your wheelhouse. And now you're starting to catch on that this is who he is, and this is what, like, just the tip of the iceberg, I imagine. But the people that you have in your circle, or he has in his circle, they're still not even at the tip of the iceberg. They just see calm waters and not sure why you're your waters are a little stormy. You might want to look at that. They're not really seeing the iceberg at all at this point, because their brains probably don't also think that way. And this just is so hard to understand.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? And that's why coercive control is so difficult to explain to people, because it's the behaviors that people can't see. So when you try to explain things to people, you almost sound crazy, because who would smash their wife's computer when she has a final due the next day? Like, that's crazy. And he's sitting there cool, calm, collected, like, "Oh, I don't know, it just fell."
Well, and probably like, look at her. She's so crazy. I accidentally dropped her, laptop while I was dusting it. And she's yelling at me. She's so demanding. And that's that Darvo, right? Like, that's that crazy, like, just evil genius of it. There's a brilliance to it, and it's sort of diabolical, terroristic. I don't even know what the word is to use. Like, it's so off the chart for healthy, normal people. And there's just no way to understand it unless you understand it.
Unless you live through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of it too, there was a big, and if you don't want to go into this topic, we can skip, but there was a big sexual coercive aspect to him as well. The demands and the, awful, degrading names he would call me and things he would say and do. And then at the end of the night, expecting things or demanding things. And then if I were to deny his advances or just flat out say no because things were so bad, he would make my life a living hell the next day. Or days after. So it was almost easier to just do it, which, is so violating for so many women and so many prey. And my heart goes out to people whose exes do that, because I know it's not everybody who, they all have their own nuances. But that's a big component in a lot of women's stories that I talk to. And it's an awful feeling. It's awful because that on the other side of it, it's not going to really help. It's a temporary fix.
Just helps you survive to the next day, essentially.
Yeah. And then it's just going to happen again.
That's right.
Well, I keep coming back to that whole coercion thing about, like, with Evan Stark, that it's a basic human right, that you have the right to your own body. You have the right to your own dignity. You have the right to your own autonomy. And all these things are being violated because culturally it's been established that maybe we don't as women, as children. And this is the big change, and we need to have the change because, it's not just a black eye or, that shows there's abuse.
Well, I was going to read Evan's, Dr. Stark's, he said, coercive control has a single objective. He said to establish a condition of dependence and subordination by making the perceived costs of the person's refusal, resistance, or autonomy higher than the cost of their compliance. And that sort of, he was talking in this terms of children, but I think this is the number one goal, is to make it it's more difficult to say no and hold yourself than it is to just let them have control, or so you think in the moment, right? And that is their single goal is to create that depth of control.
Yeah. And that you both bring up really good points. I didn't have the ability to say no in my own home. I didn't have the ability to pick a babysitter for my kid without it turning into like World War III, right? I didn't have the ability to go to bed at night and not want to have to do something I didn't want to do. I didn't have and even beyond the sexual coercion, like he would turn lights on and scream at me and fight with me, and that whole sleep deprivation thing, he did that too. I didn't have the ability to really have any sort of personal autonomy in my relationship and home. And that is the problem with marrying someone like this, because in the institution of marriage, there's a lot of compromise, and a lot of the older generations will kind of gaslight you and they're like, well, he's your husband and you have to do what he wants and this and that. And that is completely different than the dynamic of coercive control. But it's hard for us who are in it to see that. And it's really hard because it just so slowly erodes away. And then by the time you're in it, it's too late. Like, I think it's Kate Amber, she's in Connecticut, who says it's like quicksand. And it truly is. Like, when you realize it's so far gone. And the problem with these predators is they're never satisfied. So you can say like, okay, and give in and give in and give in. There is no end in sight to what they will want or do to you.
Yeah, it's insatiable.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you ever find that there was a point where we talk about Darvo, which is deny, accuse, like attack, and there's a reversal where they become like, I'm the victim of you. You're the one that's scary. You're the one that, and did you ever find that situation, or is it different for you?
No, he did that for sure, especially at the end. He would always pull the victim card, like, well, I'm working and you get to see the kids all the time. Or, towards the end, there was a lot of, I can't believe you're going to do this to me. You're just giving up on me. He was convinced I was having an affair. So he was making my life miserable. And then there was one big fight, which I don't remember what it was about, but I got to the point where I was so mad that I started throwing things outside, which is so cliche, but it happened. And that's just not me at all. I'm not like an angry person, but you get to a point where you're just like, you've been fed up. And he immediately went to the police
Yeah.
and of course filed a police report
what
and
they
was
do.
like, she's unhinged and she's
Wow.
postpartum and she's just never been the same since she had kids. And thankfully that experience was much different. The police officer that came to my house, I remember he was like, I saw your husband, your soon to be ex-husband, right? Because I think we had just started. He's like, and I see you. My ex is much taller than I am. He's a very big person. And he was like, you need to get away from him because I know what he's doing.
Wow.
So, there wasn't really any help or guidance beyond that, but just him saying that was so validating. And sometimes that's all victims need is just validation, right?
You're
Someone
seen.
to actually see it. Because he knew I wasn't, this lunatic that he was scared of. He's like, I'm scared of her. I don't want to go back to the house. What if she does something? Just playing like, coy with the cops, because that's what they like to do. They love to get the sympathy, right? And empathy is a huge systemic problem I've seen. There's so much more empathy for men. That's why they call it, I think Laura Richards calls it empathy. And
I haven't heard that. That's pretty great.
Yeah. Laura Richards and Jim Clementi. I love. They talk about coercive control all the time. And they often always say, the empathy is so rampant in society today. Like you'll see a dad who obliterates his entire family and headlines are loving dad snaps, neighbors like confused. And it's like, loving dad, he just killed his whole family. Like, what are you talking about? He's 100% a monster and was a coercive controller. But they're so quick to pathologize women and give men sympathy and the benefit of the doubt, which is so damaging and dangerous.
Well, I think we've got a lot here to think about and to process. Thank you for telling bits of your story here.
We want to hear more about really what you did with your pain, establishing New Jersey Protective Moms. And we would like to do that in our next episode. So if you're all right, we will. Is there anything else? Actually, is there anything else that you want to say before we start episode 2?
So I'll leave it on. When I finally got a lawyer and got divorced, my attorney, who is an angel, he deserves some sort of medal for dealing with this all, but he had been doing this for like 20 years at the time that I filed. And my ex, in true coercive controlling form, refused to let us serve him. He went to the courthouse. He harassed those poor women that worked at family court vicinage every day calling, where's the paperwork? Because, there's some processing time, some lead time. I want the paperwork. I want the paperwork. You're not going to serve me. I'm going to come get it. I'm going to come get it. And finally it was ready. And he went there and showed up. And the woman called my attorney and she's like, I've never had anyone like serve themselves. I don't know what to do. And my lawyer was like, let him take him. I don't know. Like he's going to save us a courier fee. Fine. And I remember my attorney calling me. He's like, never in my 20 plus years of family law have I had someone serve themselves, but he did it. And that was like, should have been a glaring red warning sign for what was to come. But if I have to look back on like the post separation to now, that was definitely like just the tip of the iceberg with this stuff he was going to pull.
Yeah. Almost like he was ready for it. Like, bring it on.
Like he was going to do it the way he wanted it, which was he was going to go there and get it. And he was not going to let anybody else control the situation. He was going to get those papers there.
Yeah. So interesting. Okay. Can't wait to hear.
Episode number 2.
How can people find you, just so that we can let people reach out?
I'm on NewJerseyProtectiveMoms.org. There's a contact us form on quite a few of the pages there, and that goes right to my inbox, and I do reply. We're building up a repository of protective moms that want to get more involved. We have a private Facebook group, And we're going to start a newsletter. It's my co-founder and I are doing this in our free time, and we both have pretty demanding careers. So, we're slowly getting there. But and then I am on Facebook and Instagram. Courtney Gilmartin is, my full name, and I'm there and I'm public, so you can find me there as well. And I'll answer, any messages that anyone can send or wants to send me. I'm here to talk.
Thank you, Courtney, so much.
Thank you, and come back for
episode number 2.
Yes.